The silence in the dining room that February evening wasn't merely a lack of noise, it was a curated environment of exclusion. My daughter-in-law, Gertrude, moved with the sharp, efficient movements of a CEO preparing for a hostile takeover. My son, Dewey, sat frozen, his eyes fixed on the fine china I had personally financed 3 years ago. When Gertrude delivered the ultimatum, either give my first-floor room to her parents or pack my things, she wasn't just asking for space, she was performing a summary execution of my status within the family. I didn't argue. I didn't plead for a stay of execution. In the world of high-stakes financial consulting, when a partner moves against you, you don't fight for the old terms. You move your assets and prepare for a market correction. I packed my leather suitcase with the same precision I used to audit hedge funds. I left that house not as a discarded grandfather, but as a silent creditor about to call in a massive outstanding debt. To understand the gravity of their mistake, one must look at the hidden balance sheet. They saw me as a passive observer of their success, a dependent elder living in the margins of their lives. They were operating on a deficit they didn't even realize existed. 4 years ago, Dewey called me, his voice trembling with the fear of a looming foreclosure notice. I didn't hesitate. I liquidated a portion of my long-term portfolio and cut a check for $180,000 to clear their mortgage in full. To them, it was a gift. In my ledger, it was a secured interest in their future survival. I funded the $15,000 Sedona wedding with the premium bar and the Red Rock views. I handled the $8,000 down payment on Gertrude's luxury sedan when her old vehicle failed. For 36 months, I maintained an automated clearinghouse transfer of $1,200 directly into their joint account to mitigate their monthly overhead. Total capital injected, $246,200. My personal net worth sat at $2.8 million, comprised of diversified equities, high-yield rental units in Tempe, and seasoned treasury bonds. They thought they were removing a liability. They were actually terminating their primary source of liquidity. 7 days after the eviction, I was sitting in a generic hotel room, but my focus was entirely on the real estate market. The house directly across from theirs on Oak Street had been stagnant for weeks, $685,000. I didn't need a mortgage. I met with the listing agent, Margaret Collins, and made a cash offer with a 10-day close-and-zero contingencies. When she asked why I was so interested in the property, I told her the location offered a unique perspective. I hired a renovation crew to prioritize one specific room, the front office. I had the walls painted a cold, professional charcoal gray and installed a panoramic window that offered an unobstructed, high-definition view of Dewey's front door. I positioned my oak desk exactly 3 feet from the glass. I wasn't hiding. I was establishing a permanent psychological presence. When the keys were handed over, I didn't just buy a house. I bought a strategic observation post to witness the inevitable consequences of their arrogance. Phase 2 of the dismantling was purely administrative. I opened my banking app and deleted the recurring $1,200 transfer. In any highly leveraged household, a sudden 10% drop in monthly cash flow creates an immediate catastrophic ripple effect. Next, I instructed my attorney, Robert Chen, to draft a formal demand for the repayment of the mortgage funds. While they viewed it as a gift, my contemporaneous notes and email correspondence from that period suggested a loan structure with an implied repayment schedule. In Arizona, the ambiguity of oral agreements backed by significant documentary evidence is enough to initiate a legal freeze. I watched through my panoramic window as the process server walked up their driveway. I watched Dewey stand on the porch, the white envelope in his hand looking like a surrender flag. He didn't know it yet, but the lifestyle I had subsidized was about to be repossessed by the very man they had discarded. As the heat of July settled over the neighborhood, the structural integrity of their finances began to fail. I watched the Websters, those entitled parasites who had moved into my room, shuffling through the living room, oblivious to the fact that the air conditioning was now a luxury they couldn't afford. The 900 per hour legal consultations were draining their remaining savings. Gertrude's luxury sedan was the first asset to be liquidated. I watched a stranger drive it away after she was forced to list it for a desperation price. Then came the internal collapse. Through the window, I saw the silhouettes of their arguments. I saw the Websters packing their suitcases 5 months into what was supposed to be a permanent stay. When the free money stopped flowing, the hospitality evaporated. My presence across the street acted as a constant, silent pressure cooker. Every time they looked out their window, they saw me, calm, professional, and entirely unaffected by their turmoil. By late August, the market had fully corrected. Dewey crossed the street, a man broken by the weight of his own inaction. He sat on my sofa, his eyes red-rimmed, and offered an apology that was finally stripped of excuses. He realized that family isn't a resource to be exploited. It is a partnership that requires equity and respect. Gertrude followed a week later, her pride shattered by the reality of her own insolvency. She delivered a mechanical, gritted teeth apology that I accepted with the cold detachment of a banker closing a defaulted file. I had Robert Chen drop the lawsuit, but the financial support remains permanently terminated. I have returned to my consulting practice, my reputation and boundaries restored. They are learning to live within the modest means they actually earned, while I sit at my desk with a panoramic view of the house I saved and the man I finally forced my son to become. Dignity, I've found, is the only asset that truly appreciates when you refuse to sell it cheap.